I died, and when I say that, I'm not exaggerating. My heart stopped, my lungs failed, my vision went black. The world disappeared, but what happened next was something that challenged everything I believed about life and death. Before I tell you what I saw on the other side, answer me one question. Do you believe that some people come back for a greater reason? Leave your answer in the comments, because after reading this story, your outlook on life may change forever. My name is Walter Harris. I'm 82 years old. I was born in rural Georgia at a time when the streets were dirt and houses didn't have locks on their doors. The world was different. Life was simple but full of meaning. I grew up surrounded by nature, learning from an early age the value of hard work and community. My father taught me that a man is remembered not for what he owns, but for what he builds. And that's what I did. I spent most of my life working as a carpenter. I built houses that no longer exist today. Every nail hammered, every board cut, was a testament to my love for the craft. I took pride in what I did. I remember every house I helped build. Every family I saw walk through the door with a smile on their face, ready to start a new life. These memories stayed with me, like invisible marks of everything I had experienced. And in the midst of all this, I met Evelyn, the love of my life. She was different from anyone I had ever met. She had an easy laugh, a look that lit up any room. And when she looked at me, I knew I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Together, we built our own story. We had 2 children who grew up strong and healthy. We saw the world change before our eyes. Technology advanced, cities grew, but our love remained the same. We spent decades by her side, good times and bad, days of joy and days of tears, but above all, a life shared. And then time took its toll. My Evelyn passed away 10 years ago. Her departure left a void that nothing could fill, but at the same time, a sense of peace. She lived well. She lived with love. I remember her smile, her contagious laugh, the way she held my hand on difficult days, and how, even in pain, we found reasons to move forward. But time doesn't stop for anyone. At 80 years old, I received a diagnosis. Lung cancer, advanced, with no cure. The doctor was direct. Walter, make the most of the time you have, because it won't be long, 6 months. That's what they gave me. I didn't despair. My children were already adults. My grandchildren were grown. Deep down, I thought I was ready to leave, or at least, I thought I was. That night, everything seemed normal. The hospital was silent. The TV was on, but I wasn't paying attention. My breathing was heavy. My chest hurt like never before. I closed my eyes, trying to find some comfort in the darkness, and in that instant, I knew. Death was there. I tried to call the nurse. I tried to move, but my body wouldn't respond. The air left my lungs. My heart failed. The world went dark. And then, the heart monitor started beeping. The shrill sound of the alarm echoed through the room, drawing the attention of the medical staff. I heard hurried footsteps, agitated voices. "Code Blue! We need a defibrillator here!" a nurse shouted. I could hear everything, but I couldn't react. It was like I was outside my body, floating. I saw the nurses running. I saw my own body motionless on the bed, but I wasn't there. I was above, looking down, watching everything happen. The sensation was strange. I felt light, free, like all the pain and worries were behind me, but at the same time, I knew something was wrong. The desperation in their eyes, the urgency in the movements, the doctor's hurried commands. "Come on, Walter, stay with us," someone said, as they began compressions on my chest. The scene seemed distant, like a dream, as if I were watching a movie outside the screen. Then I felt a wave of heat, and suddenly pain, a sharp, cutting pain, invaded my chest. The shock of the defibrillator pulled me back. The light returned to my eyes, and I was back. But something had changed. I saw the other side, and now I knew my journey was not over yet. If you want to know what happened next, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell, because the most intense part of this story comes now. What happened next was real. More real than anything I had ever experienced. The hospital disappeared. The pain disappeared. The sound of the doctors screaming fell silent, and then I felt it. Something was pulling me up. It was a feeling impossible to describe in human words. As if an invisible force was lifting me effortlessly, as if I were just a leaf blown by the wind. There was no fear, there was no resistance, just absolute peace. When I opened my eyes, I was no longer there. What I saw was beyond anything I could have imagined. A golden field, endless. The tall grass swayed gently in the breeze, forming golden waves that danced in the soft light. The sky wasn't blue, it wasn't white. It was a mixture of indescribable colors, shades I had never seen before, as if the universe itself had been painted with emotions rather than ink. The silence wasn't empty, it was full of a music that came from nowhere, but that I felt inside me. Every element around me was in perfect harmony. Everything breathed tranquility. And for the first time in a long time, I felt complete. And then I saw him. He was standing before me. His figure radiated a soft but intense light. It wasn't blinding. It wasn't blinding. It was comforting, like a hug on a cold day, like coming home after a long journey. He didn't say his name. He didn't need to. Because the moment I looked into his eyes, I knew he was there for me. His presence was powerful and at the same time gentle. It was as if every part of me, every doubt, every fear, every pain was dissolved by his simple existence. And then he spoke. His voice was soft but firm. It echoed around me, not as sound, but as feeling, a melody that seemed to have been part of me for a long time. It's not your time yet, Walter. My mind exploded. What do you mean? How is it possible? I had felt my heart stop, my body fail. I had died. So many questions came to me at once that I didn't know where to begin. But I died. I felt it. My body stopped. I managed to say, my voice coming out more like an incredulous whisper. He just smiled, a serene smile, full of wisdom, of understanding. It was as if he already knew exactly what I was thinking, as if all the answers were already inside me, and I just needed to remember them. You think your mission is over, but there's still something you need to do. At that moment, a door of light opened before me. It wasn't an ordinary door. It wasn't made of wood or glass. It was as if the air itself had parted, revealing a path to something much greater than I could understand. And inside her, I saw it. Flashes of my life passed before my eyes. I saw Evelyn, young again. Her smile was the same as the day we met. She wore that white dress that swayed gently in the wind, and her eyes shone with the same innocent joy of our youth. She was beautiful. I saw my children, but not in the past. In the future, I saw their faces marked by the passage of time, but full of happiness. I saw their families, their children, their achievements. I saw moments that had yet to happen, and then I understood. If I left now, something would be left unfinished. There was something I still needed to do. What is it? I asked, my voice filled with urgency. What do I still have to do? He looked at me with a gleam in his eyes. Come back and find out. His voice held mystery, but also hope. Before I could say anything else, the light enveloped me. It was warm, comforting, like a soft blanket on a cold night. I felt my body being taken over by an indescribable lightness, as if I were being gently carried back, cradled by the very essence of peace. And then I woke up. My eyes slowly opened, and the cold light of the hospital blinded me for a moment. The sound of the monitors returned. The smell of the sterile environment filled my lungs. Reality reconfigured itself around me, and the first thing I felt was a hand holding mine, soft, trembling with emotion. I turned my head. My daughter was there. Her eyes were shining with tears, and her expression was a mix of shock, relief, and happiness. "Father, you're back." His choked voice trembled in the air. I smiled. I could still feel the warmth of the light inside me, and I knew my journey wasn't over yet. There was something I needed to do, and this time I was determined to find out what it was. The sounds of the hospital came back all at once. Voices, alarms, hurried footsteps, and then a scream, "He's back!" The air rushed into my lungs as if I had been sucked back to life. My vision was a blur of lights and shadows. My ears caught fragments of loose sentences. Blood pressure rising, heart rate stabilizing. How is that possible? My eyes flew open, and the brightness of the room blinded me for an instant. I was alive, but something had changed inside me. My skin tingled, my chest rose and fell slowly, as if the very act of breathing had become different. I knew I was not the same man who had closed his eyes moments before. And then came the news that changed everything. The cancer, gone. The doctors ran tests. They repeated it. They compared the old results with the new ones, trying to find some logical explanation. But there was no explanation. The tumor in my lungs was simply gone. They called it a miracle. But I knew the truth. I came back with a purpose, and I spent years trying to figure it out. My recovery was something no one could explain. My family and friends surrounded me with love and admiration. Every day, new visitors arrived, flowers, cards, long hugs. But as I saw the joy in their eyes, I felt an immense weight on me. I knew that my life had not been spared for nothing. But why? Why me? I began to reflect on each moment of my life. I remembered the houses I had built, the people I had loved, the simple days that seemed ordinary at the time, but now weighed heavily on my memory. And then one day, something happened. Walking through the hospital corridors, I saw a man. He was sitting in a corner, alone, his face hidden between his hands. And I felt it. Something pulled me towards him. Without thinking, without hesitation, I went to him. I sat down next to him and took his hand. He looked up in surprise, his eyes red from crying so much. But he didn't move away. His eyes were full of pain and despair, but behind it, there was a spark of hope. And before I knew it, the words were out of my mouth. "It's not your time yet." He blinked, confused. "How do you know?" His voice was a thread, almost without strength. I squeezed his hand. "Because I've been where you are now." He stared at me. "And I know there's a greater purpose waiting for you." And that's when I saw it, the transformation in his eyes, the glimmer of hope, small but growing. Tears streamed down his face again, but this time they weren't tears of despair. They were tears of relief. "Thank you," he whispered, squeezing my hand tighter. "I needed to hear that today." In that moment, I understood. I wasn't saved just to keep living. I was saved to bring hope to those who needed it. From then on, I began visiting hospitals regularly, not as a patient, but as someone who understood. I sat next to strangers. I listened to their stories. I shared mine, and with every conversation, every look that lit up with hope, I knew I was on the right path. I remember one woman in particular. She was battling a terminal illness. When I arrived, she could barely look up to look at me. She believed her life was over before it was. I sat down next to her and calmly began to tell her my story. I told her about the golden field, about the voice that told me my mission wasn't over, about the weight of feeling lost and the liberation of finding purpose. And at the end, she looked up at me. Her eyes were teary, but filled with something new, determination. "You've given me a new perspective," she said. "I will fight. I will live each day as if it were my last." And that's when my mission became clear. I existed to remind people that life is worth living. Over time, my visits became a part of me. Sometimes I would just hold the hand of someone who needed silence. Other times, I would tell my story to entire groups, and I could see the change in their eyes. And whenever someone asked me why I did this, my answer was simple. Because one day, God told me that my mission was not over yet, and now I tell you the same. If you are still here, it is because your mission is not over either. Maybe you don't know what it is yet, but one day you will find out. And when that day comes, I hope you are ready. Now tell me, have you ever felt that something saved you for a greater reason? Comment here. I really want to know your opinion. If this story touched you, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell, because stories like this need to be told. And remember, life happens now. Don't waste your time.